like to hand over to LNT Partners, represented today by Dr. Lynette. He is in charge of the Singapore office of LNT Partners and the head of the Financial Services, Infrastructure and Arbitration Practice Group. We're very lucky to have him here today. He's been involved in many signature deals and cases involving Vietnam. Dr. Lynette, may I hand the presentation over to you? I'm sure we're all very much looking forward to your words today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marius. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to present to you today some of our thought and experience in renewables and a little bit of LNG. For those who haven't met LNT and Partners, we are one of the major local law firms in Vietnam. We have an office in Singapore, and we have been actively working in wind energy and also LNG so far in the last few years. Our clients range from electricity in Vietnam, or major clients from Denmark, or power energy like Gencos or PV powers and others. So so please turn on the first slide. Now, coming to this session, maybe your main I would like to ask, what is your main issues in energy, if there is only one? Bankability, of course, but for M&A, but the bankability also depends on the cash flow, and the cash flow depend on what? So Raymond, can you turn on the next slide? So I think it should be the demand and supplies. The cash flow in the end depends upon the demands, and the demands depend upon the transmission line or the grid. So next slide, please. So the demand comes from, let's say, industries. If you look at this map, what you can see about Vietnam, the characteristic of Vietnam is that the two concentration hub is in the north and the south, and the center, the infrastructure is not that developed. But the major solar power plants and the wind power plants probably will be located in the central area. So you already see the problem. So here's the number. Here's the reason why Vietnam is is attractive as to its economic growth, as to the relationship between China and US, and also because of itself. It's the high growth of middle class consumption, and also the number of industrial parks. Next, please. Now, but in terms of infrastructure, if you look at this is the expressway infrastructure in Vietnam. You can see that the major expressway is located in the north. And because of the major expressway is located in the north, you could see that the potential of industrial growth or industrial parks is now somewhat focusing on in the north. And now you can see that the power plants mainly located in the where? In the center and in the south. That coming to me to the point of the next slide. Next slide, please. Now, then you have LNG and renewables. Renewables oversupply in the center, about right in the south, and shortage in the north. The north, the sun usage is not high, and also there's a lot of mountains, so you cannot put a panel solar there. The wind is also the wind speed is also not high, so there is a shortage in the north in terms of renewables. LNG oversupply in the south and center. So far, we advising on the first LNG project in Nhân Trạch, but in terms of in terms of PDP, the power development plan, there would be oversupply in the south and in the center. Now, shortage is in the north. There will be, but soon there will be more. So that would be the prospectus of renewables and energy. Next slide, please. Now it comes to the grid. Now, we already have 3 lines of grids, the high voltage 5 kilovolts between the north and the south. Can we build another line? It is possible, but you look at the map, you will see what? You see there was a thin line in the middle of the country. And between the sea and the border with Laos is only 50 kilometers. And in that 50 kilometers, maybe the coastal area is about like 10 kilometers, and the rest is in the mountain. So there is the problem of we call having challenges, because in that provinces there is very narrow land. Even if you want to build a new line, it's not easy. And then you have the forest land acquisition. If you are familiar with investment law, to get a forest land acquisition, you have to ask the Prime Minister. And of course, you have to ask a lot of ministries before you come to the Prime Minister. And Vietnam is like probably in China or in other countries with similar political system. Bureaucracy is still a problem. So it's not about money. It's about the land available. It's about bureaucracy that make the grid development is becoming more difficult. Then people are talking about smart grids. So you have the combination between the 220 kilovolt and 110 kilovolt and 500 kilovolt. How do they combine together? That it might be possible for so far, and also because of COVID situation. A few months later, they're still talking about import of energy from China, because as I said, there is a shortage in the north, and the transmission from the center to the north is difficult. And in the south, we have to export to Cambodia, and in the south of Laos, probably we have to export to Laos, and to import from Laos again in the north. With the back-to-back system with EVN. So what the long-term solution for all this? Of course, is in the grid construction, is in the high voltage kilovolt development, but that there is only so much we can develop. So probably the solution would be to develop cities, infrastructure in the center south, the center and the south to consume energy there. And that's the reason this year the government developed like seven expressway connecting to Ho Chi Minh City, so that they develop more industry from the south, so that the south can consume power more. Next slide, please. And that is the PDP 8. The connection is region to region rather than from the center to the south, and that is the plan for transmission line development. So yes, that is something that depends to the government. Nothing we can do about it. We are private investors, but that is crucial and decisive in cash flow prediction, as well as project development and M&A, I believe. Next slide, please. And then the solution for the grids, some think about the PPA, and a few days ago, EVN just have a meeting, and they plan to adopt the option C developed by the USAID for the DPPA model. And in that option C, there is a contract. If you see the red line is the electricity flow, and the green line is the financial transactions. There'll be the tariff power purchase between the consumer and power corporation. But then there will be the bulk power tariff between EVN and the power corporation for the service of transmitting the lines. And also there's a wholesale market agreement between GENCOs and the EVN. GENCO is the generation corporation of EVN. And between GENCO and consumer, of course, there is the DPPA fixed price payment and the price swap. So that is still contemplating, and they're planning to do that by the end of this year, the DPPA model, and also applicable for big buyers and big sellers. So DPPA is not available for rooftop solar providers. There is an oversupply on rooftop, you know, and compared to network solar power, they do have Circular 27, and they do have the provision in Circular 2 equivalent to take or pay. Sorry, equivalent to the obligations of EVN to purchase the power generated by the power plants, subject to the capacity of the grid or the curtailment. But for rooftop, there is no such clause, and therefore rooftop might be the victim of overcutting the purchase from EVN. So that is the good thing about rooftop is that it's easy to develop. The bad thing about that is that there is no guarantee of consumption. There is a situation of storage. There's a solution for storage, but right now the government is still EVN is still considering whether the price they purchase from the storage would be equivalent to the price that they purchase for solar. But my argument is that why not? Because they also come from solar, but they don't see that way. And let's see how we should negotiate with EVN to make sure that the price in the night discharged from the storage, originally from solar, should be the same as the price of the solar system. And then there is some build transfer lease if you want to develop the grid yourself. But the system of BTL should go for the PPP law, the private public partnership law, and with that the process of approval takes a long time. Some developers, they can't wait and develop it first, and then they have problem of how to deliver their system, even if it's free, to the government, because again, bureaucracy. There's no mechanism how to take that back. Now, can you jump on the next few slides to the next issues of the Vietnam wind power project M&A market? Next slide, please. So potential offshore wind project in a new draft of PDP8. Here's the one, the one that's appendix 9.3. Next slide. And then the timeline for the PDP8. You know, February is established, and then the Prime Minister request for review of PDP8, and again to review of the PDP8 and continue now to comment and review. So we hope that there'll be new wind power capacity to be added in the PDP8. But of course, there must be a price of reducing the capacity of other sectors, such as LNG. Next, please. So the loaded demand for this is the capacity, and in the high to low scenario, it's like this. I think maybe we can skip that numbers. Next, please. So whether the current M&A recognized on the master plan and how to approach the next step. Now, it depends on the power, the project you are in, because in Vietnam there is a new investment law just adopted, and in which there is the mechanism for tender for selecting investors. So in the past, when you have the PDP approval, you have the name of the investor on it. Nowadays, there is only the name of the project on it. And with the name of the project on it, you don't know who are the investors. So the good thing about that is that for those who come later, there's still a chance to develop to join in the tender. But the bad thing is that for those who spend a lot of money for survey, they have to stay on the line and do the tender again. So that remains to be seen how it will be evolved in the future. There has been a draft discussed within EVN and Ministry of Industry and Trade. So far, the PDP approval, they have the name of investors on that, but it cannot be guaranteed. Recently, you see there is a selection of investor going on in Canap LNG project, and that set the precedent that maybe other projects they also set the same theme. Next, please. Yeah. So that is now this. It goes like this. The project. If you have the idea to develop project, you have to talk with the provincial people's committee, and they submit an application. Then MOIT review the application based on the opinion from the relevant ministries, like Ministry of Industry and Trade. And the application package has to include the planning scheme, contain detailed information of the proposed project, the documents from competent authorities on the plan, how the land, use the land and use of the water, natural resource, seawater surface. And there is an opinion. There has to be the opinions of Regional Power Corporation (EVN) on absorption of potential power grids within the area. And then with that three key application content, they submit to the MOIT, Ministry of Industry and Trade. Ministry of Industry and Trade, they collect opinion from other relevant ministry like MPI, like Ministry of National Defense, so on. Then it's come to the next step is to they propose later on and get the electricity renewable energy authorities appraised in complete application, and then to follow the regulations on planning. That is that come to the next step of tender and selection of investors. Next, please. The feed-in tariff for price of electricity, offshore, onshore is 8.5, offshore is 9.8, but only until October 2021. And the MOIT has submitted a written request to consider extending the time apply of feed-in tariff to 2023. Next, please. So there is no specific draft currently beyond that that news that I should share with you. And so though haven't been approved for PPA, would not have to wait for guidance to be approved. Next, please. And then it comes to the issue of the wind capacity and the bottleneck, and there are the three lines, the infrastructure that I just presented. Next, please. But at the same time, there is still a vibrant M&A market and on the upward trajectory. And total power capacity in the province is 2.5 gigawatt and 15 gigawatt in the period to 2030. And the high demand of electricity, attractive electricity tariff make the M&A activities is very very vibrant. Now, for those who planning to finish before the deadline of October 2021, there was the total capacity is about 9 gig. But so far, the one is already have finished COD is only 0.9 gig. So only 2 more months to go, 2 or 3 more months to go. And with the COVID, it's happening right now. Probably it has to be extended because of the COVID. Next. So then that is a few projects that I can share about the project that have signed PPA so far this year. Next, please. So the project that apply for FIT 8.5 cent is 13 project and 600,000 megawatt project waiting for FIT extension is 1.9 gig and project waiting for new FIT or bidding is 7.5 gig. That's the current status for wind power project. So if you can see from there, the majority of the wind power project is still waiting for FIT and still in the bidding. Now, many people ask me that for mega project, you still go for the feed-in tariff, or you still have the standard form PPA, or is there a chance to negotiate? Well, the feed-in tariff that after 2021 or maybe 2023, we don't know. But for the PPA, likely the government is willing to change a few clauses, such as the termination payment. Other clause, perhaps is difficult. Next, please. So a little bit about us. Well, we already mentioned in the beginning. I have my email in the PowerPoint that I believe that will be delivered to you. If you have any questions, please feel free to let us know. In the panel discussion, I'll come back with the issue of bankability as well as the particular clause of the PPA project. If you want to discuss about that, how do I view the particular clause like clause 8 or clause 7 of the PPA project, please feel free to share your views. Thank you so much. Over to you, Marius.
Thank you very much. That has taken us just past the top of the hour and leads us to the end of the formal presentations and on to the panel session. And I'm very pleased to be joined here by my partner, Eric Sedlak. Eric is a cross-border transactional lawyer with over 20 years practicing in Asia, including in Vietnam, a very senior practitioner. Please, Eric, I will hand over to you to moderate the panel session. And could I just, before I do that, remind all the participants, the last time I checked, we still have over 100 participants online. This is really your opportunity. What are your issues in relation to your investments? What are you looking at? Perhaps you are, on the fence in terms of a potential investment in Vietnam. We're all here and ready to answer your burning questions. So on that note, may I hand the virtual microphone over to you, Eric, to moderate the panel session. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, Marius, for your kind introduction. I'm never sure whether it's good to be called a senior lawyer or not. I sometimes say that my hair used to be blonde, it was brown, and now it's turned blonde again. We have a number of questions, and I think, frankly, we'll probably, to make sure the audience has what it needs, I'd like to go through the the questions we've had from the audience first, and then maybe if we have some time, we could ask the panelists to make some closing remarks. But I guess first, I have a couple probably Vietnamese law questions, which we ought to turn over to Dr. Net. And the first is, until when does Net expect the tariff on offshore wind to be extended?
Thank you. I think the tariff offshore wind, they asking for now to be extended, but there'll be the bidding process coming in. So in the bidding is also bidding for the tariff that coming in for that, and the government is working on that as well. So as for what I know from those who already have the investment certificate, they are safe, because once they have the investment certificate, they already have the PDP approval, they already have project approval, they already have price approval. So so if they have the COD before October this year, or luckily if they can be extended for 2023 as planned by MYT, then they safe. They will have 8.5 or 9.8, depending. But there's no offshore, so 9.8 is not feasible. But 8.5 cents per kilowatt. But beyond that, when the government will no longer apply feed-in tariff, then it comes to the situation of bidding. That comes when the government gets submit to the authority. The authority will organize the bid. And when the authority they shortlist the wind project, will be announced by the People's Committee, and at the year, let's say they planned it for 2025, then by a few months before the start of 2025, they will conduct a bidding for investors, and they have and then the investor, if they win the bid, they will negotiate the specific tariff and sign the PPA with EVN, and then the wind so the project that having COD from 5th November until N-1, I don't know N is which year. Let's say 2025, then N-1 is 2024. Then 1 year before that bidding tariff starts, there will be there's still a feed-in tariff. So or hopefully there will be the extended feed-in tariff from this year. So yeah, so we don't know what is the end. End is end maybe 2025, maybe 2024. But let's say in 30 September 2020 N-1 means if there's 25, there's 24. There will be the bidding tariff schedule for wind project will be announced by the Ministry of Industry and Trade, and that schedule will be applied for in the next 5 years. So N+4, and then they can have the shortlist, the wind project. There will be the bidding process, and they win the bid. They negotiate the bidding tariff. But before that date, I mean, let's say assume that N is 2025. Before the 2025, you still have the bidding tariff. Is that
okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that answers the question.
Thank you.
The next question, I think, is also, in effect, it's probably a contractual mitigation question, and also for Dr. Net. And the question is, how does the developer deal with the challenges of grid congestion and PPA terms such as the inflexibility of COD and step-in rights for the lenders?
Yes.
Have any suggestions without giving away what you do when you're advising on a deal?
Well, when you so far we have thank you. So far we have the PPA, and the PPA is fixed, so we cannot negotiate against those risks. What what I try to do is try to analyze and look at the PPA in a different way, so that you can think that it is feasible, and that model PPA under Circular 02/2019 is somewhat bankable, and that's the reason why people still getting in that Vietnam project. So, for example, in clause 2 of the model PPA, they say that the buyer shall buy the whole power output of the grid connected with power project. So that means, to me, it look like they commit to buy all, and still 3 years now, they still, the commitment is still to buy all. They just only cut when there is a curtailment. They have the right to do so, because in the clause 4, 4.4, they say that the buyer shall not be liable for obligation for buying or receiving electricity in the following case. The first one is power grid transmitted and or connected in different areas have problem, or the equipment directly connected power grid that have a problem for operation. And the power grid of the buyer needs recovery solution after incidents and comply with the regulation of operation national electricity system and standard of technical regulation of electricity industry. So what they say, okay, I have the right to cut you, but I will not cut you arbitrarily. I will cut you according to the regulation on the operation of national electricity system. So if we cut everyone equally. So I think that's fair. I mean, that probably is the solution in other countries too. So yeah, negotiate, no, but from the experience so far, EVN honor their commitment, and EVN credit rating is the same rank as the national credit rating of Vietnam. So of course you don't need to have GGU if you have the debtor, the obligor, have the same credit rating as the guarantor. Then when you can talking about the force majeure. So there is a clause on the force majeure, clause 6 of the model PPA, and they say the duration of force majeure, if the force majeure apply for a period of 1 year, then and the party that suffer, the other party that's suffering has the right to terminate the agreement after 60 days of the date of the notification received. And in terms of damages, what happened if EVN did not honor their commitment, because that's something that you must be concerned, because there's oversupply actually, and the price is some price is it's quite high compared to the price that come later. So that's very tempted for the buyer to break the contract. But there, I think that should not be worried, because under clause 8.4 about the compensation damages, in paragraph B, they say that aggrieved party shall demonstrate damages, level of loss caused by the violation, and the direct benefit that the aggrieved party should be then entitled to if there is no violation. So you have the whole system of, let's say, investment law. You have the PPA, and if they don't, if the buyer, the EVN is state-owned enterprise, they don't honor the PPA, then you have the whole system of investment law, bilateral treaty, investment arbitration to protect you. And the damages that you can claim is the actual loss and the direct benefits. Of course, not consequential loss, but that should be good enough for the bankability in terms of violation, or in terms of damages. And then in paragraph A, you say that whoever violating the agreement shall pay compensation for damages caused by violating activities to the aggrieved parties. And compensation value will include the value of actual direct losses by the violating party, but borne by the aggrieved party, and the direct benefit that the aggrieved party would be entitled to if there is no violation. So the language of PPA on that matter about compensation is particularly clear. I think the thing is not clear is the termination payment, and that's something I believe that big project would be able to negotiate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a question now for Peter Hulbert, and the question is: the latest PDP8 draft and conventional wisdom suggests that LNG as gas in the form of gas to power projects will naturally play a transitional role between the hydro and coal dominated power market and a renewables led scenario. What factors might challenge this proposition? And I guess a follow-on question, how could global energy markets and trends impact the role of LNG in Vietnam's energy future?
So, Eric, look, PDP8 is very ambitious with respect to gas, and we're hearing a lot about all these projects. But this only comes to pass if you like, if the stars align, and there are a number of stars which have to align to make this happen. And first of all, there's the very obvious one about getting a satisfactory feed-in tariff negotiated, as we've heard also for the renewables. But then we've got what's going on, some of the externalities to the projects themselves. And so let's talk about domestically first. So this is predicated on there being an orderly and planned retirement of a set of coal assets. Now, if you look at this through the lens of the exact plan, then that's fine. But if you look at the likely dispatch, and especially with decreasing loads, there's every possibility that the coal plants, or the pricing of the coal plants, they're not going to give way. And so the gas plants aren't going to be able to force their way onto the merit order. So it comes back to that other question, as I said, about feed-in tariffs. Looking at the complete externalities, we start to look at international gas markets. And this is where it gets really interesting. So international gas pricing is actually, until relatively recently, the start of last year, it's come down. And so that's very attractive. That makes gas projects very, very good. But what we're seeing now is that those gas prices are climbing, and that's going to challenge the viability of gas prices on the high seas. And not only the actual gas prices, and you may ask, why am I talking about high seas gas prices? Because there's an increasing proportion of gas contracts which are being made in the short term rather than the historical long-term agreements, and the sellers are increasingly reluctant to go to long-term agreements because they can ride this roller coaster of volatility for their own ends. So there are a number of sort of, how should I say, technical and market pressures there. And then, of course, we've got the obvious one that we all know about the internal and external carbon pressures, and where the lenders are going with that. But if you put these things together, you've got very complex projects with very long lead times. And then putting it together with certain levels of uncertainty, you've got to look at the where the lenders are going to sit with all of this, and whether they feel they've got certainty. And so you can look at a renewable project, which has a much smaller development lifetime compared to a thermal project of any sort, which has this incredibly long pathway ahead of it. So it's certainty, timeline. Yeah, there are real challenges. There are real challenges there. And if you take into consideration, I was reading somewhere recently that the Vung Ong, the latest Vung Ong project, has taken over 10 years, and it's not even financially closed. These are very long lead times.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I think we'll move quickly. We're getting a lot of questions in. Two, maybe one is sort of a regulatory question. One is more just a market question. What's the current installed capacity versus demand And the second question, which is very near and dear to our hearts at KNL Gate, since we do a lot of corporate PPAs, is whether developers are allowed to sell directly to C+1 to commercial and industrial customers, or whether they have to sell into the grid first.
I can answer on the demand and installation, but I need Raymond help me to get back to the slide number 4 of my presentation. So, oh, okay. Before that, a few slides before that. Okay. We go past this demand, yeah, and the before that one slide, yes. So the loaded in, sorry, you just skip that. Yes, thank you. So the loaded demand, there is two cases, the base case scenario and the high case scenario. So the loaded demand to 2020, 0 offshore wind power 630. 2025, 0 offshore wind power, 11.3 gig for wind power. And well, during my rooftop power is already 9 gig. And total installed capacity is 102 gig. Load demand is 95. So the total installed capacity versus the loaded demand is higher, always higher. Of course, if we project the economy growth at a higher speed, and we normally believe that if the economy grows by 1%, you need 2% of power increase. But right now with the smart grid and with the others, the power consumption maybe 1.5%. This is 1% GDP growth. And if you have electric car, then demand could be higher too. And each electric car can be a storage of the power for your household. So so that with that, we believe that the demand could be increased. But so far, that is the projection of the PDP8 with a base case and low case scenario. But 2020, there will be more offshore wind power. And when it comes to if the base case is 2 gig, of the high case 3 gig. Why they believe that? Because one slide before, please, can you go to one slide before? One or yeah, the one slide before, please. Yes, because right now they already have in the draft PDPA the following project: the Phú Yên 2 offshore wind power, the Bình Thuận offshore wind power, Tuy Phong offshore wind power, Ninh Thuận offshore wind power. So all together, if you count them on, is I think this 4.5 gig, 5, and well, probably yeah. When it round up, is with 20 gig and 25 gig. So that is the capacity. I believe is only Appendix 9.3, and Appendix 9.3 is after 2030. Before that, there will be a few. So if you look at that and the chart before, there'll be there is the plan to develop that. Of course, the people in that Appendix 9.3 are not happy, and because of that, the solution for that is to say, okay, for example, Phú Yên 4.5 gig. Probably there's 2 mega projects, and each project is 2 gig. Why do we need that? The government may say that, okay, by 2025, I'll launch a bidding project. So let's say you have 2 investors, investor A for project A and investor B for project B. Why don't A and B compete? for project A only, and whoever pay a lower price get the project. And so therefore, the Appendix 9.3 only name the investor who wants to invest and who plans to invest. That's not yet approved. That is in projection. And when the project is approved, there will be a bidding, and so the capacity might be reduced. So the projection and the reality might change in the future.
Okay, I think
Yeah.
just quickly, what is the position on selling directly to commercial and industrial customers in Vietnam?
Yes.
Is that going to be possible?
Yes, it's possible. I think what they plan to, they pull up the big buyers and the big sellers, and they have to register to participate in the platform of PDP. And the big seller is the one who produce at least 35 megawatt. So the rooftop is out. They are not participant. Rooftop is only those who project is below 1 megawatt. Then the big buyer, they have to commit to buy a big quantity, and then they can negotiate with the operator, and the government will charge the transmission fees and the management fees. So, but the grid problem is also the issue. So if you look at the grid, you can predict that the south can only supply the south. The south cannot supply the north, too far away, and the north supply the north, and the center probably can supply the south, but not the north.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, although we have national grid, but it's not efficient that way, because they charge you a very high price of transmitting that is not worth to buy from someone from the south.
I see. That's kind of a similar issue to Japan, is the transmission
Yeah.
model.
Yeah.
Okay, we're actually coming pretty close to the end of the session. Maybe I'd like to ask Robin and Peter if they have any last observations to make before I turn it back to Marius.
Nothing major from my side. I think there was one question about are we expecting a decreasing of wind EPC costs post FIT, and how many percent? I think it's very difficult to answer that, particularly in terms of percentage, but I think it's fair to say that internationally EPC contractors and suppliers have certainly been very aware of feed-in tariffs and auction processes, and you know, if they want to be involved in projects, they also have to be commercially competitive. So yeah, I would generally expect ongoing reduction, but difficult to say the quantification. Yeah, that's all from my side.
I'll look just from my side, Eric. Thanks. Just to sign off, I'd just like to suggest that people keep an eye on the externalities. To date, we've in the Vietnamese power market, it's been largely an internal marketplace where we've had internally defined parameters, and now we're going to have more and more influences from the outside, and keep an eye on what those are.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. So back to Marius.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Eric. And you know, just to add on to some of Peter's comments as well. I mean, one of those externalities to consider is on the financing side, and increased requirements from lenders, particularly in relation to environmental risk. I mean, certainly to the extent, you know, Singapore and Hong Kong are financing hubs for the region. You know, governments in both of the countries, particularly in Singapore, are increasingly introducing guidelines and measures to really guide banks and other financial institutions in relation to considering environmental and ESG risks, particularly in the context of their lending decisions, you know, not only in Singapore, but also regionally, and including Vietnam. And so the pool of lenders available to lend to projects and thermal projects in particular is ever decreasing. And there's a lot of pent up demand from those, and also from, you know, multilaterals. And so While I agree that feed-in tariffs have been a key ingredient in the recipe for Vietnam's huge success in particularly in the solar market, I think reduced financing costs and availability of finance will be key going forward. But of course, that plays into bankability and PPA issues and plays into a lot of the comments that Dr. Nett has mentioned as well. And so, look, we're right on 4:30 now. Thank you to everyone for bearing with us for the last hour and a half. I hope you found the discussion as interesting and informative as I have. Again, we will circulate presentation materials and hopefully a video after the session. May I just end by perhaps a silent round of applause for all of our panelists and speakers today, and also to those who have taken the time out of their busy schedules to sign in to our webinar. Thank you very much, and have a nice day to everyone.
Thank you so much, Marriott and Eric, Peter, Robin, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much from me as well.